The China's billion people vanished. Hypothesis. Time to know the facts. Can you imagine over 1 billion people quietly disappearing? No wars, no famines, no mass exodus? That China, the world's second largest economy, now has just 300 million people and no one globally noticed? Such a claim would stun anyone who hears it. Yet this is the theory circulating across social media, that China's real population is far lower. Its urban centers are emptying, and behind the statistics lies a hidden demographic downturn. It's a gripping tale, but if we set aside emotions and dig into data, demographic logic, consumption metrics, transport, infrastructure, and trade, the story looks very different. Because if over 1 billion people declined unexpectedly from a modern nation, the world would feel it. No need for hypotheses or on-the-ground clips. It would show up clearly in supply chains, trade figures, energy markets, and every container ship docking in Europe and the US daily. Join Top 10 Discoveries Official as we break down the numbers, cross-check reality, and explain why the billion people vanished hypothesis lacks foundation. It's time for data to speak. In the age of social media, where anyone can become a storyteller, a wave of hypotheses about China's population has spread rapidly, racking up millions of views and shares. Videos, posts, and comments on platforms like YouTube, Reddit, and X often tap into skepticism, unease, and the belief that something massive is being hidden. One of the most popular claims is that China's true population is now just 300 to 400 million, with over 1 billion people having fell sharply, silently, without conflict, disaster, or war. Supporters of this idea argue that the population drop could be due to a mix of factors, including unconfirmed reports of extremely high mortality during COVID-19 and suspicions about the accuracy of reported population data. Some theories reference social media footage of crematoriums appearing to operate continuously, combined with limited publicly available mortality data after 2022, to question the official narrative, though such claims remain unverified. Some claim up to 400 million died from COVID-19, with authorities concealing the disaster's true scale. A recurring argument cites a 20 million mobile subscription drop in early 2020, suggesting that millions of dropped-off phone accounts mean their owners are no longer alive. Others reference national salt consumption, arguing the population must be far below 1.4 billion, since a larger population would consume much more salt. This reasoning hinges on an indirect metric, seen as objective, because it's harder to manipulate. Additionally, videos of deserted cities during Lunar New Year or off-peak hours are shared as proof that China's urban centers are becoming ghost cities, lacking life, workers, or a consumer class. Finally, some argue China's government has motive to maintain or exaggerate the 1.4 billion figure to project a vast market for foreign investors, bolster global influence, and mask internal demographic, economic, and social issues. These theories share a common thread. They rely on intuition, emotion, and isolated phenomena rather than comprehensive evidence, verified data, or systematic analysis. Yet their appeal lies in the insider feel and natural distrust of opaque institutions. Now let's examine each claim using real data from the United Nations, World Bank, telecom agencies, trade metrics, and demographic logic to see if over 1 billion people vanished is a hidden reality or a mirage fueled by algorithms and fear. Official figures from reputable global organizations like the United Nations, UNDESA, and the World Bank provide clear, hard-to-dispute evidence. According to UNDESA's 2023 report, China's population is estimated at approximately 1.409 billion, a slight dip from 1.412 billion the prior year. This aligns with long-predicted trends of an aging population and low birth rates, not a sudden, catastrophic loss of hundreds of millions, as extreme hypotheses claim. UNDESA projections suggest China's population may gradually decline to approximately 1.317 billion by 2050 and approximately 732 million by 2100 if low birth rates persist. Yet no current demographic models show any sign of a mass vanishing between 2020 to 2023. Similarly, the World Bank pegs China's 2022 population at 1.412 billion, noting that 22%, 310 million people, are 60 or older. This elderly population alone exceeds the 300 million total population some conspiracy theories propose. A simple question arises. If China has only 300 million people, where are the 310 million seniors living? Data from global organizations, independent of domestic statistics, offers the first credible evidence that no mass population critical strain occurred. From here, we can begin dismantling baseless assumptions with real numbers. In 2020, China conducted its 7th national census, one of the largest population data collection efforts in human history. Over 7 million enumerators surveyed over 500 million households, covering every province, territory, and demographic group. Results showed a population of 1.411 billion. Notably, this census wasn't solely a Chinese effort. It was overseen and technically supported by international bodies like the UNFPA, UN Population Fund, and UNDESA, using global standard methods and digital tools for accuracy. QR code surveys, mobile apps, and cross-verification with local administrative systems. Key metrics from the census include average fertility rate, 1.3 children per woman, below the 2.1 replacement rate, consistent with long-term population decline trends. Urban population, 65.47%, approximately 925 million, with 34.53% rural. A demographic structure logical for ongoing industrialization. Sex ratio at birth, 111.3 boys per 100 girls, reflecting past restrictive birth policies, but confirming data on hundreds of millions of individuals in the system. With its scale, methodology, and independent oversight, this census is highly reliable, reflecting the true population state and showing no billion-person gap as wild hypotheses claim. One of the strongest counters to phantom population theories is China's actual economic purchasing power. Per China's National Bureau of Statistics and World Bank confirmation, domestic consumer spending in 2023 reached approximately $8 trillion, up 7.2% from 2022, a growth rate surpassing many developed economies. If China had only 300 million people, as some theories claim, per capita spending would be approximately $26,667 per year. For context, this exceeds the US's per capita GDP to $23,000 per year in the same period, the world's top consumer economy. In other words, for the theory to hold, not only would most Chinese people have to vanish, but the remainder would need to outspend Americans. This is statistically absurd and contradicts China's income levels, living standards, and social structure. Look at industries driven by domestic consumption for a clearer picture of market size. China has over 1 billion mobile internet users, with 850+ million regularly shopping online, per Sanic. Platforms like Taobao, JD.com, and Pinduoduo report stellar revenues, handling hundreds of millions of daily orders. Impossible with only 300 million people. The dining, entertainment, and domestic tourism sectors also rebounded strongly post-pandemic, with retail consumption indices rising for 10 consecutive quarters. This shows China's consumption isn't driven by a tiny, ultra-rich minority, but by a market of over 1 billion people engaging in daily shopping, living, and spending. If over 1 billion people seemingly disappeared from records, retail, logistics, and consumer finance systems, would be deteriorated almost instantly. Something global investors would immediately notice and react to. So the question, can an economy sustain $8 trillion in annual consumption with just 300 million people? The answer, no. No economy could, not even the US. To gauge a nation's population, Look at telecommunications, where every person leaves a clear digital footprint. Per China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, MIIT, by late 2023, China had approximately 1.7 billion active mobile subscriptions, with over 1.3 billion on 4G/5G. These aren't claimed figures, they're technical data reported monthly by carriers, tied to national SIM identification, eKYC processes, and digital payment systems. The China Internet Network Information Center, CNNIC, reports over 1.05 billion mobile internet users, approximately 75% of the population. This aligns with a 1.4+ billion population and reflects modern Chinese consumer behavior, a society driven by smartphones, apps, and digital wallets. Now test the 300 million people hypothesis. If 1.7 billion SIMs serve 300 million people, each person would need 5 to 6 mobile subscriptions on average. This is financially and behaviorally implausible and contradicts China's strict SIM regulations, limiting users to 3 SIMs per carrier. Moreover, nationwide 5G expansion, fiber optic infrastructure, base stations, and data centers reflect a digital ecosystem serving billions of daily interactions. From ride-hailing and QR payments to online shopping and remote learning, no 300 million person economy needs such infrastructure. Nor would any government invest over $200 billion in 5G for an imaginary population. In short, telecom doesn't lie. Mobile data, internet users, bandwidth usage, and infrastructure scale clearly show China isn't down to 300 million people. It's connecting over 1.4 billion daily, literally. China's electric vehicle, EV market isn't just an industry, it's a barometer of economic vitality and real population scale. In 2023, China consumed approximately 9 million EVs, over 60% of global EV sales, a volume surpassing the US and Europe combined. Apply reverse logic. If China had only 300 million people, 1 in every 33 people would buy a new EV annually. This would amuse any market analyst, as no nation, not even EV leader Norway, has such penetration rates. Ask, would a 300 million person nation need 2 million public charging stations nationwide? Or over 300 factories producing EV batteries, motors, chassis, and software across 31 provinces? The answer is clearly no. China's EV boom stems not just from domestic production incentives, but from massive consumer demand. From megacities like Shenzhen and Guangzhou to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, EVs are a go-to for the growing middle class, a natural outcome of a 1 billion-plus urbanizing society, not a fictional market. China is also the world's top EV exporter, surpassing Germany, but the domestic market remains the primary driver. With only 300 million people, every citizen, including children and seniors, would need to buy, charge, and drive EVs to keep factories afloat. That's economically impossible. In other words, China's electric vehicle market doesn't operate in a vacuum. It runs on real population, real infrastructure, and real consumer demand. And that's something any global investor, analyst, or business clearly understands, even if online conspiracy theories don't. Reaffirmed by supply chains and on-the-ground reality. From export data and logistics capacity to cargo traffic at ports like Shanghai, Tianjin, and Shenzhen, every indicator shows China operates at a billion-plus population scale. A real population shock would manifest globally through price increases, supply chain slowdowns, and reduced global demand, none of which have occurred. A hypothesis may shock, a video may spark debate, but global supply chains don't lie. If over 1 billion people declined unexpectedly from China in a few years, the world would feel it first. No hidden cameras or drone shots of empty streets needed. Container data, cargo flows, and global price fluctuations are undeniable indicators, untouchable by political claims or media spin. Consider China's major ports. Shanghai, the world's busiest container port, handling over 47 million TEUs in 2023, something that wouldn't be possible if China's production capacity had been significantly reduced by a massive population drop. Tianjin, Shenzhen, Ningbo Zhoushan, consistently among the top 10 global cargo ports, not just in volume, but in ship docking frequency and logistics turnaround. Exports. China remains the top supplier of consumer electronics, EV batteries, medical equipment, and apparel to the US, Europe, and Asia, requiring a vast workforce, modern transport networks, and a functioning domestic market. If China's population mass vanished, as some viral videos claim, the fallout wouldn't be confined to China. It would hit global supply chains directly. Goods wouldn't arrive, raw materials would dry up, prices would soar, and US or European stores would have empty shelves, none of which has happened. Global firms like Apple, Tesla, Siemens, L'Oreal, Nestlé, and Adidas continued expanding production or distribution in China in 2024. No multinational would invest in a market empty of people or demand. Even domestically, in construction, transport, and e-commerce logistics, handling tens of millions of daily orders, thousands of inter-provincial shipments, and billions of annual parcels would be impossible with only 300 million people. In short, China's entire economic, export, transport, and consumption system operates at the scale of a 1.4+ billion person nation, and the world relies on it daily. A massive population shift in China would have caused ripple effects across global supply chains. Yet there's no sign of such an impact. After comprehensively reviewing data from population, consumption, telecom, and supply chains, it's time to debunk each social media hypothesis, claims leaning heavily on intuition and isolated events rather than systematic evidence. The first hypothesis claims that a 20 million SIM card drop means 20 million people died. This is one of the most shocking yet easily debunked arguments. The 20+ million mobile subscription drop in Q1 2020 doesn't mean 20 million deaths. This period coincided with COVID-19's outbreak, when many lost income and cut non-essential costs, like secondary SIMs, business plans, or data cards for paused jobs. MIUI IT reported mobile subscriptions rebounding from Q3 2020, surpassing 1.7 billion by 2023, further debunking a massive unrecoverable population drop. Additionally, numerous videos showing empty streets, deserted restaurants, and vacant subways during Lunar New Year or pandemic peaks are used as proof of a vanished population. But this is a classic logical fallacy, generalizing from isolated phenomena to a broad conclusion. In JACT, major cities like Shenzhen, Shanghai, or Beijing see population outflows during holidays, with hundreds of millions returning to hometowns, a decades-long pattern. Videos often capture off-peak hours in office districts or commercial streets with low foot traffic. A 20-second clip can't define the state of 900+ million urban residents. Contrary to viral footage, Chinese cities aren't deserted, but expanding vibrantly. Nighttime light data from NASA and NOAA satellites, a proven method for gauging economic and urban activity, shows steady increases in light intensity from cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, even post-pandemic. This isn't the glow of ghost cities, but of ongoing production, transport, and consumption. Domestic mapping and mobility platforms like Baidu Maps and Gaud Mobility confirm urban traffic surged post-2023 Lunar New Year, with domestic tourism hitting record highs. The movement of hundreds of millions in weeks is impossible if empty population theories were true. Regarding infrastructure, Chinese cities are far from frozen in development, as some conspiracy theories suggest. In contrast, China's urbanization is accelerating. The Xiong'an area, a smart city 100 kilometers from Beijing, is set to house over 5 million by 2035. It's not just plans. Administrative offices, schools, hospitals, and modern transport links are already operational. Metro systems are a precise population gauge. Beijing runs 27 lines, approximately 800 kilometers, serving 12+ million daily passengers. Shanghai, often called empty in edited clips, has the world's largest metro network, over 830 kilometers, serving 10+ million daily. These figures couldn't exist with a 300 million population. Even former ghost cities like Ordos in Inner Mongolia are reviving through targeted migration, infrastructure investment, and industrial shifts inland. Once abandoned areas are now logistics hubs, residential zones, or administrative centers. This shows Chinese cities aren't empty. They're operating and expanding per the logic of a 1.4+ billion person nation transitioning to smart urbanization. Some other hypotheses argue that the slight decline in China's total salt consumption in recent years indicates a real population decrease. Yet this aligns with a 2017 public health campaign to cut salt intake to curb heart disease and hypertension. Shifts to modern diets, less salt in processed foods, and increased use of low-sodium soy sauce or fish sauce further lowered per capita salt use, not population. Another widely circulated hypothesis claims that crematoriums operating around the clock are signs of a larger, unreported public health crisis. This emotionally charged claim lacks verifiable data. During the COVID-19 waves, some cities like Wuhan experienced funeral services under stress during peak periods, a phenomenon also seen in the US, Italy, and Brazil. However, after that period, there's no evidence suggesting cremation services continued operating abnormally nationwide. Even independent estimates from outside China do not confirm such enormous figures. Independent estimates outside China don't support massive figures. WHO 2023 estimates 1.5 to 1.8 million COVID-19 deaths in China from 2020 to 2023, approximately 0.1% of the population. The IAHME's highest model, University of Washington, suggests up to 3 to 4 million deaths during late 2022 reopenings, still under 0.3% of the population. If 400 million died, as some theories claim, over a quarter of the population would be gone, a 25 to 30% death rate unseen in modern history, even during the 1918 Spanish flu. Such a scenario would create visible ripple effects, like reduced population density, underutilized urban areas, declining school enrollments, and slowing consumer activity. Yet no such trends have been observed. No such signs exist. Demographic metrics like life expectancy and birth-death ratios remain stable, showing no anomalies matching a billion-person loss. Finally, the argument that China deliberately inflates its population to attract investment sounds plausible, but lacks practical operational logic. This seems plausible, but lacks operational logic. Foreign investors don't rely on announced population figures. They analyze spending, consumer behavior, digital service usage, retail transactions, logistics, and market capacity. If the population were a billion smaller, supply chains wouldn't build factories, e-commerce platforms wouldn't invest in AI for billions of orders, and global banks wouldn't fund projects for tens of millions of customers. These sensational claims often lean on intuition, isolated events, or negative emotions, but lack verified data, demographic frameworks, or economic logic. When dissected with facts, they quickly lose weight. Instead of chasing unease, it's time to trust data. The truth lies not in a 20-second clip, but in a functioning societal structure. In an era where algorithms, emotions, and conspiracies can distort information, a seemingly simple question, how many people are in China, carries profound global implications. If China truly has over 1.4 billion people, as leading international organizations confirm, it's not just a dry statistic. It redefines China's role in global dynamics. A billion-plus population isn't just the world's second-largest consumer market. It's a workforce, user base, and creative force in nearly every modern economic value chain. It underpins China's rise in strategic industries like EVs, AI, robotics, semiconductors, and green tech. Fields shaping not just technology, but the balance of global influence. Major economies don't make strategic decisions based on rumors. Their investments across Asian markets reflect confidence in robust data on population scale, consumer demand, and supply chain reliability. They do so because real metrics, consumption, production, supply chains, and market capacity remain undeniable. Global giants like Tesla, Apple, General Motors, Starbucks, and Nestlé, armed with robust data analytics and risk assessment, continue expanding operations, investments in China-specific products. No one bets long-term on a fake market. Their actions reflect the real existence and capacity of a society with over 1 billion people: consumers, learners, workers, and global trendsetters. In an era of intense global competition, China's population truth isn't just statistical. It's a pivot for investment strategies, diplomatic policies, industrial capacity, and global supply chain security. Misjudging this number, whether from emotion or misinformation, risks not just perception, but strategic positioning in a rapidly reshaping world. In an age where a 30-second video can overshadow a 300-page report, it's easy to see why theories like China has only 300 million people spread so fast. They tap into unease and sometimes a desire to believe something shocking, unique, or anti-establishment. But when we push emotions aside and examine verified cross-check data, the story is clear. No billion people have dropped off without clear explanation. There's no silent demographic crisis. No selective narrative can obscure the glow of cities, the movement of subway crowds, or the steady flow of containers through global ports. Yes, China's population is declining, but it's a slow, long-term, transparent process, not a modern extinction event, as some sensational videos suggest. If we let emotion override analysis or rumors trump data, the cost isn't just misunderstanding. It's a strategic misstep in understanding a nation shaping the world. So in the end, do you trust data or social media hypotheses, reports from global organizations, or unsourced 20-second clips? If you've ever bought into these theories, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Top 10 Discoveries Official for sharp analysis, clear data, and global perspectives on what seems hidden. Top 10 Discoveries Official will return with more stunning breakthroughs, monumental projects, and untold stories from around the world. Goodbye and see you next time.